Next, we will have a look at the if-else statements. With if-else statements, they are used to create conditional statements, and a block of code is executed depending on whether the condition is true or false. If it's true, it will be executed, and if it's false, Python will move on to the next condition or expression and evaluate it. So the way you read this is, if this condition is true, then execute the associated block of code. But if it's false, move to the else statement and execute the block of code that belongs to the else statement. And some refer to this as if then else statements because they read this as if condition is true, then execute this block of code. So that's why it can be referred to as if then else statements. And there is also another statement as well, which is the else if statement. And this statement is used if you have more conditions. And every time a condition is false, it will move on to the next condition and evaluate if that's true. If it's true, it will execute the block of code. Otherwise, it will hit the very last condition, which is the else. And it will hit this one if all the other conditions are false. And if we notice, the blocks of codes here are indented. And this is to represent that it belongs to the if or the else condition above it, or the else if we are using else if, which is a good thing for multiple reasons, including it makes the code much easier to look at, read and understand. And it's the way Python groups codes into blocks of code, whereas with other languages, typically they use parentheses or curly braces to do the same thing. But with Python, using indentation, it makes the code a lot more pleasant to look at, and that's why people love Python. It's a lot more pleasant to look at, easier to understand and work with. And for our conditions, we use Boolean operators, which are these over here. For example, if the condition equals something and it needs to be a double equal over here when using it within an if statement, as a single equal is used when assigning a variable to a value. We can also use the not equal to, or the greater than, or the greater than or equal to, less than, or less than or equal to. We will write some code next, but here's a few rules. So the block of code is indented, and then we have the elif condition. Also, we write it as elif, and we will have a look at this in the code, but it's used if you need more conditions in your if statements. Finally, the if statements are a top-down approach, and once it hits a condition expression that is true, it will stop and execute the block of code associated to that condition. Otherwise, it will hit the else condition, which is the very last expression when everything else is false. Let's have a look at some code next. First, we will create a variable profit equals 700, and next we will create our if statements. If profit is greater than 500, we need to add a colon at the end. And notice when I press enter, Visual Studio has indented it for me. And if profit is greater than 500, we will print we made profit and exceeded our target. Next, we need to add an else statement, and this is not indented, so we go back to the very first line. Else colon, and when we hit enter, notice it's indented it for us again. Let's print we did not make any profit. Let's print another statement as well. Let's print one more statement. Try and sell more items tomorrow. Let's save this and let's run the program. And the result we see is we made profit and exceeded our target, and that's because the variable equals 700, which is greater than 500. Let's change the variable to 200. So we would expect it to hit the else statement this time, and let's run our program again. And this time we did not make any profit. Try and sell more items tomorrow. So here we are saying if the value is more than 500, we have made profit and exceeded our target. But if it's not greater than 500, which means it will be 500 or less, then we did not make any profit. But let's say we actually do make profit above 300. So we need to add something in between. And for this, we can add a further condition to check if we still made profit. And this is known as else if statements, using the elif keyword. So here we would type, let's cross this off, and let's add an else if statement in the middle here, starting from the very first line. So let's type elif profit, let's go with is greater than or equal to 300. And we can add a comment here so we know exactly what this means. And to do that, we create comments using hash. So Python will ignore this as code and it knows it's a comment. And if I hit enter here, if you notice, it's started it at the very first line. And this is because I've missed a colon here. So let's add our colon and let's press enter again. And now it's indented it. So we know this time the statement is correct. And let's print we made profit, but there is room for improvement. And again, let's save this and let's run our code. And we will start off with it being 200. So that's not greater than 500 and it's not greater than or equal to 300. So it will hit the else statement at the bottom here as the result. So let's have a look. And we can see we did not make any profit. Try and sell more items tomorrow. Let's change this to 400 and try it again. And we can see we made profit, but there is room for improvement. And finally, again, if we change this to 600 and run it again, we made profit and exceeded our target. And to complete this, let's add another statement, but nothing to do with our if statements. Let's add something like life is great. Try and be positive every day. So now what we are saying, regardless of any of these statements, this line will run every time. At the minute, the profit is 600, so the top line should run. We made profit and exceeded our target, and we should see the very bottom line here because this is not part of our if clauses. This should run regardless. So let's run this to verify the results. And we can see here we have made profit and exceeded our target. Life is great. Try and be positive every day. And if we change this to 200, run it once again. This time it's hit the else statement at the bottom here. We did not make any profit. Try and sell more items tomorrow. Life is great. Try and be positive every day.